Welcome back to another video. This is not necessarily an episode of Fortune or Folly. I did buy these broken for the purpose of fixing them, but this is for the purpose of actually using them. So I got this lot for $200. That's total. This is a $600 graphics card, and this is a $400 motherboard. So pretty worth it if I can actually get these working. To my understanding, this one works, but the PCIe port is melted. You can kind of see. So I think the end goal for this guy is going to be to fully just replace this port, assuming that the rest of it works. I think what I'm going to do is going to go ahead and remove this first, just to make sure there's no shorts or anything between these pins right here that are melted together, and then test it just in this bottom slot and see if it turns on at all. As for the graphics card, this is a 6800 XT, and this was the one that melted. So you can see it's actually pretty bad. It's actually pretty deep as well. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start on this one here first. Going to get this taken apart, and we're going to test the voltages and see if the core is still alive. If the core and the memory is still alive, then we have a chance. If not, I might be screwed on this one. But let's get it taken apart, and we're going to move under the microscope. I did notice this immediately, is that I'm under the impression that what caused the damage was a leak from an AIO. So presumably this is water damage right here. I don't know, I'll take a look at that in a little bit, but let's get on to the main event here. Okay, I wasn't expecting to see signs of flux here. Is that flux? I can't tell if that's, no, that looks like flux. So what lines were those? Is that not just 12 volt and ground? We're gonna go into continuity mode. Let's find a ground plane here. Let's see. Yeah, so this is ground. And these ones are not ground, but they don't seem destroyed, which is shocking. I'm wondering if I can just fill this with like epoxy and then lay a trace over it. Originally what I was going to do is I was going to actually use a Dremel to literally saw this section off and then rebuild it, like transfer it actually rather, from another board. But I feel like I might be able to get away with covering it and rebuilding it that way. Yeah, that is gone. Let's see. So that's on the rail there. Is that cracked? No, just a little hair. I am going to check the coils in just a minute. Okay, so I'm under the impression that this is a good sign that this isn't shorted right here, because I believe that coil is on the 12 volt rail. So is this right here? This seems like it's just two traces that go to the same pad. Am I right on that? Let's look on the back here. Are these the same? Was also burned. But to a lesser extent, it looks like. And then this is just a scrap board, but I just want to see if they're the same. Okay, at least on this one they're different. I don't know if it's a standardized is my problem. Like, I know the pinout is, but I don't know for sure that these run the same way. So if we assume these first three, and then only this one is 12 volts, so that would mean that we need one trace to run here. So we would need to rebuild a trace here connected to this one. Unless it's redundant, which it might be redundant. And then one trace needs to go here for the 12 volt rail again. It's getting more complicated a little bit as we go on. Okay, so what I've gone and done is I cut 3 pins off of another graphics card, and I've kind of been whittling them down to kind of fit here. And the spacing is just about right, but it's not quite going in as good as I want it to. But I think I'm gonna have to give this a trial run and see if this is gonna work, because I don't want to cut too deeply into the board where the layers are gonna matter. Because on this end part here, the PCB layers aren't really causing that much of an issue, like if they were to come into contact. But if I get past this onto the 12 volt rail here on this back end, then we're gonna see a lot more problems. So I think what's gonna give us strength is if we do this backside first, because the backside was intact prior to me dremeling it out. Oh, I don't like that curve there, actually. It's gonna have to work, but it is weird. I'm noticing on this other graphics card, I just looked to see if I had it reversed, but the pins are pointed on this one, which is interesting. Oh, whoops. I don't have like a thin enough iron tip that wants to stick. So, especially another thing that comes with having a thick solder tip is that these fucking trace repair bits here are not wanting to stick properly. I think I will leave this for the moment just because the donor I have, these components are way too big. Does it have continuity at least? Let me see that actually. Presumably it's supposed to have continuity at least. We get 262 and 262, 262, 262, 0, 0. That makes sense. Okay, that actually tests like the other ones at least. So I'll leave that for now. Let's flip this back around. Let's take a look at connecting these bad boys. That doesn't look like it lines up as well as the back does. I'm gonna be so honest. That makes me a little concerned. The back looked like it lined up really well, ultimately. But let me compare to my donor board. How is this supposed to be connected? And then that other pin next to it should be empty. Okay, might check for bridges. I also I need to check side by side, especially to make sure that they are not connected on this ridge here in between the two. So let me switch back to resistance mode, or well, continuity mode rather. Nothing. Nothing. I don't think that's right. Is this one trace? It is one trace. Okay. Is there anywhere else for that to go? I don't think so. I think that's intentional. I scratched this into it, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I kind of want to test it as is, but I'm scared of making the damage worse without guaranteeing it.
Okay, so I apologize for the poor audio, but I do want to kind of go over some of the things I did quickly because it is different than what you have in the recording, just slightly. Because I did find some more information after I attempted the repair the first time. Basically, I found these high resolution images of the PCB, courtesy of Tech Power Up, so they have an awesome review with some resources on it. Found a pinout for a PCIe X16, and I realized that I actually had that slightly wrong. So if I recall correctly, this is the 3.3 volt rail, or I'm sorry, this is the 3.3 volt rail, and this is ground, and this is the LDP, which is like a clock signal, if I remember correctly. However, that's kind of redundant. So on these ones, despite them being destroyed, I was able to simply, you can bridge these two here for that signal, and then connect this one to the one next to it for ground. And that's what I ended up doing there. And on the back side, it was just as you saw, the same connector. And how I held it in, because the reason I had to redo it is because I actually tested it first, and it did not work. And when I pulled it out, the piece that I had installed ripped straight out. It wasn't strong enough to hold it in. So I ended up just using, it was like a rubber cement that I used, and it held it in great. I actually unplugged and replugged it in several times, and it is strong, it's holding up, and you're about to see the results here now.
Okay, I've got it in my second slot on my demo rig, and I shit you not, we have boot. There is no fucking way in hell that this worked. I'm so sketched out on this. I've been like smelling for smoke, trying to make sure that I have everything right. There's no fucking way in hell. I'm gonna run like Heaven and Furmark and see if what happens. There's no fucking way. Okay, just as a demonstration, I just wanted to test it, so I pulled up the Monster Hunter Wilds benchmark, and we are solid. I'm genuinely in just complete fucking shock that this worked. This is ridiculous.